Hold up, we're doing what to yogurt now? And welcome back to Cliffieland. This is week in country number 170 on our second attempt of cooking the food of every single country in the world, and tonight up to the nation of Tajikistan. Tajikistan is located in Central Asia. It is a mountainous nation. It's surrounded by the nations of China, Afghanistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan, and it's just kind of that far away from Pakistan across that little arm of Afghanistan. And it is an ancient nation. It has an ancient cuisine that is very similar to that of just about everything else in that kind of Central Asian region. There are a lot of overlaps with a lot of these other countries. For instance, one of the things most common in the nation is pulav. You may know it as pilaf. That is a layered dish involving rice and any number of other nuts and grains and vegetables and meats, and those vary from nation to nation and actually home to home. People are really proud and protect their individual recipes for pulav, and we cooked a really great version of that way back when we cooked the food of Azerbaijan, and we'll probably do another pulav before we get to the end of this in the final 23-week stretch that we're doing here. Therefore, we decided not to do that again this time around. Apologies to the Tajik people. They're also known for some great green teas, and bread is a central thing in life. In fact, if a meal doesn't have some kind of bread, it's not considered a meal. And that's indicated in the loving care with which bread is made, and it's sold, and it's decorated, and there are even traditions evolving how to deal with bread. Like if you drop it, you're supposed to not throw it away, you're supposed to put it up high for the birds to eat, and they're decorated beautifully, and we're gonna try not to make a huge insult to the Tajik people when we try to make our own bread here as part of this dish. Now, we dealt with this whole thing last time around, so let's take a look and see how things went 4 years ago. Well, back during the initial Global Cooking Challenge, I did get to cook and stream across 2 nights, and on the second night, I wound up making a pulav for Tajikistan, and it was very delicious. But like I said, we're going to be up to our eyeballs in pulav by the time that this whole thing is over if I do it every one of these countries, so unfortunately, we're not doing it for Tajikistan. But I did make my own bread for that night, and that was very nice. But what we are doing here is what we did on the first night, which is we made the national dish of Tajikistan, which is called Qurutob, which is a layered dish involving that flatbread and yogurt in a very interesting way, you'll see. And as I understand it, the dish doesn't normally have any meat on top. However, for some reason, this Tajik recipe did. And I chose this one. I apologize if this is, terrible or something, but it was really nice last time, and I'm looking forward to doing it this time. Now, a thing about this recipe is that it is complicated, because if you're doing this in Tajikistan, you probably already have the bread, you probably already have these dried yogurt balls, which you can easily find there, and you certainly cannot find here. So we're going to have to be making our own bread, we're going to be making our own dried yogurt balls, which is going to be really interesting, and then we're putting the whole thing together. And we're also doing it with lamb. Now we need to see what goes into tonight's dish. For our sautéed vegetables, dried yogurt balls, and flatbread with lamb shanks, we'll need... First, we'll need to start with the fatir. For that, we'll need 7 ounces of flour sifted, half a teaspoon of salt, 2.4 ounces of water, 1 small egg, 1.2 ounces of butter at room temperature, 1.2 ounces of rendered lamb fat or just more butter, also room temperature, and half a teaspoon of sesame seeds. Then for the quick kurut, we'll need 18 ounces of plain whole milk yogurt and 3/8 of a teaspoon, that's 2.5 grams, of salt. Then we'll need the roasted lamb shank, and for that we'll need half a teaspoon of salt, a quarter teaspoon of ground cumin, a quarter teaspoon of ground coriander, 1/8 of a teaspoon of chili pepper, 1 or 2 lamb shanks totaling 22 ounces, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, 16 ounces of tomatoes quartered, and finally for our qurutob we'll need 7 ounces of onions very finely sliced, 1 ounce of olive oil, salt, the quick kurut which we will have made, the roasted lamb shank which we will have made, 2 ounces of water, half of the fatir which we will have made, plus 2 teaspoons of parsley chiffonade and 2 teaspoons of basil chiffonade. That looks really interesting. It was really delicious last time. Looking forward to doing it this time, so we need to get cooking. Start on the kurut. Preheat your oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit.
Then pour the yogurt into a baking dish and bake for 1.5 hours. Then move on to the flatbread. Sift the flour and place it in a bowl. Add half a teaspoon of salt. Then in another bowl, break an egg and beat it. Slowly add the egg to the flour and salt mixture. Then slowly add the water to the mixture. Shape the dough into a ball. Cover and let rest for 30 minutes. Then work on the lamb shanks. Into a small bowl, place the salt, cumin, coriander, chili pepper, and mix it together. Season the lamb shanks on all sides with the spice mix. Then heat an oven-proof skillet or Dutch oven over medium-high heat. Add 1 tablespoon of olive oil, and when shimmering, sauté the lamb in oil until it is brown on all sides. Add the tomatoes, cover with a lid, and place in the oven at 300 degrees Fahrenheit for 2.5 hours. When the time is up on the dough, onto a floured surface, place the dough ball and roll it into a 6 by 12 inch rectangle. Cut lengthwise into 2 long strips, spread the butter over the dough, and roll the first strip into a cylinder. Then place it on the second and roll the whole thing into a thick cylinder. Cover and refrigerate for 1 hour. Once the baked yogurt is ready, take out the baking dish and pass the yogurt through a metal colander, pressing a spatula to extract the whey. Discard any remaining liquid and mix with 3/8 of a teaspoon of salt. Return to the baking dish and cook for another 30 minutes. And then remove it from the oven and set it aside. Once the dough is ready, lightly flour a clean surface. Place a cylinder of dough vertically on your floured surface. Then with the palm of your hand, flatten to a 1/2 inch thick to 7 inch diameter disc. Sprinkle the top generously with flour, flipping frequently, and then if desired, make a decorative pattern on the disc. Sprinkle the sesame seeds on top, pressing the seeds into the dough. Line a baking sheet with parchment paper. Place the disc on the sheet and bake for 25 to 30 minutes. Once the lamb is ready, take the lid off the lamb pan, cook for 15 minutes, and once the bread is ready, remove the bread from the oven and set it aside to cool. When the lamb is ready, remove it from the oven, flip the lamb shanks, and cook for another 15 minutes. Then in a pan over medium heat, heat the oil. Sauté the onions until softened, season with salt, and cook until golden brown, stirring regularly. Crumble the baked yogurt. Take the lamb out of the oven and take the meat off the bones. Remove the skin from the tomatoes. Transfer any remaining liquid to a container. Crumble the yogurt balls into the pan with the onions. Add the cooking liquid and the reserved water, and simmer until the liquid is thick but still liquid. Tear half of the bread into pieces and toss them into the pan. Transfer to a ceramic serving dish optionally. Arrange the meat and tomatoes on top and reheat for 5 minutes in the oven. Dress with chopped basil and parsley and serve family style or as individual servings.
How'd that all turn out? Well, it was just as great as it was last time. Honestly, I had totally forgotten about this dish, but it was so good. Now, there were a few things that were different than last time. Last time, I only had one oven, which kind of made a problem for me in terms of temperatures and so forth, and this time I did have a toaster oven and a separate regular oven, so not to have to fight with those two things. However, in doing that, somehow I got a temperature wrong. Ergo, when I baked the yogurt in the first place, the temperature was at 350 and not 300, so that meant it kind of got a little bit burnt in places, which you can probably see, and I lost any form of liquid in there. So that was kind of dry, and what was in the pot with the lamb and the tomatoes was kind of dry also. So basically, there was lots of liquid last time, not so much liquid this time. That's why I had to add some water. But all that aside, it was super delicious. The herbaceous elements at the end of the basil and the parsley really did make a key element to it that gave it just that extra something that it needed to bring it all together. As I've seen elsewhere, other places, it looks like, again, traditionally there isn't meat on top, but that meat was so good. That lamb with that spice mix was just delicious. The lamb shank, it just fell off the bone and it just blended so perfectly with that dish. And the bread. About the bread, again, if I had an actual, Tajik oven and everything, it would be wonderful. I did the little toaster oven on that, and I didn't have lamb fat, I just had butter, but it was buttery and it was nice. The bread wasn't really cooked perfectly, but it didn't matter to me because once I chopped it all up and it was in the dish, it was just nice, and I just kind of gave that nice bit of fatty elements into it that really went nicely with all the spices and the meat, so it was a really great dish. I'm sure I could do it much better if I gave it more effort and another shot at it, but as it was really terrific, and give that one 4 out of 5 globes. I hope you liked that. I hope it wasn't a terrible insult to the Tajik people, because I really liked it, and someday I'll have an original Tajik meal if I can ever find a Tajik restaurant anywhere in the United States. But that does it for this little stint here in Central Asia. We're going to be heading back to Africa next week to have the interesting and, shall we say, bifurcated food of the nation of Tanzania. See you then. And remember, if you'd like to be advised when these videos are posted, please be sure to follow us on Periscope. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Like and subscribe if you'd like to be advised when these videos are posted, and be sure to hit that bell to get those notifications. Remember, links to the original recipes can be found in the About section. If you have any thoughtful feelings or helpful suggestions about the food we're eating, please be sure to sound off in the comments. Thanks for watching, and happy eating!